And before I introduce our guest, there are a few housekeeping rules. The toilets are around the corner, and there are some upstairs in the first floor, in the ground floor, and the first floor as well. I will be your fire marshal here in case of fire. Just follow me. The fire escape is through there. It's a bit dark, but we hope there's no fire. Yeah. This is a very special occasion, and it's part of Word Power International Black Literature Festival and Book Fair. We had a main event at the Emirates Stadium, the Arsenal Football Stadium conference halls, over the weekend from Friday to Sunday, where we had exhibitions of literary activities. We had booksellers, book distributors, publishers from Africa, the US, Jamaica, and significantly we had one publisher from Holland. And I realize we have a few people from Holland here this evening. And one of two of you has bought his book. Yeah, so the diaspora is working very well. This event is a very, very special event because part of our work here at Enterprise is to raise the consciousness of people of African descent, because we feel that is very, very important. And so we do run a series of lectures all through the year, not only Black History Month. Every month we have about 2 or 3 lectures, and also book lunches, and we run what we call creative writing courses here, helping people develop their writing skills. So we do a lot of book lunches, but we like to support first-time writers who are not given the opportunity to learn their books in the high streets, big shops. We have in our midst today a very esteemed lecturer. It's a primary researcher, and primary researcher, if he sees something, he's researching properly. He's not quoting from other people. If even he quotes from other people, he tries to find proof to substantiate it. So whatever you hear from our guest tonight is something which is authentic. It's not recycled stuff. And Anthony Browder is an African American who has traveled widely, and he's been to Kemet, which is modern name, the modern name for Kemet is Egypt. He runs steady tours to Egypt every year, so it is something which he will talk to you about, but it's highly recommended. I hasten to add, I haven't been on his tour, but I hope to do that one day. Those people who have been on the tour tells us they learn a lot. He's based in Washington, D.C., and he's worked with or studied under a lot of great ancestors, people like John Henry Clark, Issa Hilliard, and a few others. He also currently works with, I don't know if you've heard this woman's name, Marimba Annie, author of Yurugu, who was also with us last weekend. They are all part of the movement who are trying to present the true history of people of African descent, because they believe we've written ourselves out of history. So their movement is to re-educate us. And so today's lecture is very, very incisive lecture, and you learn a lot from it. Without further ado, can I hand you over to the big man himself. Welcome to Enterprise once again, Tony.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Let me start by doing a couple of things. One, can I have the folk from Holland stand up, please? I've never seen black folk from Holland. And there are a large number. Welcome, welcome. Fantastic, great. And I'm from the U.S., as you know. And unfortunately, most people of African descent who live outside of the diaspora have to communicate through the oppressor's language. So the American version of English is slightly different from the English version of English. So I have a tendency sometimes when I talk to talk fast. And I know from personal experience when I'm over here and I'm listening to you all talk, I don't understand anything you say. So I have to listen intently, and sometimes I have to ask you to clarify what you've said. So during the course of this evening's presentation, if I say something that you don't understand, feel free to ask me to clarify it for you. If I'm talking too fast, ask me to slow down, because we're here to have effective and meaningful communication. So we all want to be on the same page. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, fantastic. The other thing too is that I'm really pleased to see so many young folk here, especially this cute little sister here. Really pleased to see so many young folk, because the subject matter that I'm going to discuss has to do with something that affects all of us, the media. And as a parent, specifically as a single parent, raising a child who is now a young woman, I was always very conscious about what I exposed her to. And I found that I was typically by myself in that, because not very many, hey Wayne, how you doing, brother? Wayne Chandler, brother, fellow researcher and scholar from the States. I was always very conscious about what I exposed her to, and I often found that I was alone in my concerns about the media, about the songs that she listened to on the radio, about the television programs that she watched, about the CDs that she listened to. And I have that concern because my formal background is in the media. I have my degree from college in graphic design and advertising, so I've worked in advertising for a number of years before I changed and began to work as a historian and a researcher. So I understand the media pretty well. And I know that the media is a very powerful force. It is something too powerful to take for granted, and that we cannot afford to be lax and say, oh, it's just a movie, they can watch it. Oh, it's just a record. No, everything impacts you on multiple levels. And once you know that, once you understand the power of the media and how pervasive the media is, if you have children, you then will protect your most valuable resource. And you will not allow anybody to have access to your child. If you understand very basically that as human beings, everything around us affects us. Everything that we see comes into our bodies and affects us on multiple levels. Everything that we hear, everything that we do, the people that we're around all affect us. So that we cannot afford to be lax in how we live our lives or how we help our children negotiate life. So this presentation is for parents. It is for adults who have nieces and nephews. It is for children, youth, so that you can begin to understand how precious your life is and begin to take responsibility for everything that affects every aspect of your life. So I'm going to give you a general overview of the media, how it works, how it affects us, and then we're going to talk about solutions. What we can do, what we can begin to do in our own personal lives to better negotiate the world in which we live so that we can achieve the things that we desire. So, before I get started, let me ask everyone in the room with a cell phone to please turn your cell phone off. Okay? There's nothing worse to do a presentation and have a cell phone go off and have someone have a conversation while people are trying to talk or listen. It's very rude, very inconsiderate. So if we can have everyone turn your cell phones off now, then we'll begin the presentation. And I trust that you all will be able to see the images without any difficulty. I don't know if we can, if it's possible to manipulate any of the lights in the back, but, okay, all the lights are off. Okay, that's good. Okay, thank you. That works. That's good. Can we go back to where we were? And the lights in the back. Yeah, that's good. That's fine. That's fine. No, but then, all right. Let's hold on for 1 second. Let's get this right. Let's get this right. How many light switches do we have back there? 2. All right. Let's try 1 and see what 1 gives us. Wait. All right. No. That's not bad. And then if we do, and what's 2? Okay, 2 turns this one on. We want this one off. We definitely want this one off. And this one is... No. Tell you what.
Yeah.
There we go. How's that? Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So, and I've got enough light here to see my notes, so we're in good shape. Okay, so let me just restart this again, and we'll be ready to go in a heartbeat. Okay, so the presentation that I'm going to give this evening is focusing on the media and its effects on people of African ancestry. Now, much of the information that I have compiled here is information that's geared toward an African American audience, but due to the fact that the American media is ubiquitous, it affects everyone throughout the world. So the same data will apply to you whether you live in the UK or Holland or Africa or the Caribbean. So what we want to begin to look at is to analyze the media and its effects on people of African ancestry, and then begin to look at how we can counter the pervasive negative images that we see in the media that affect us on a conscious and subconscious level, so that we can better determine how we are going to negotiate life. So we begin by talking about what the media is. I want to give you a basic construct so that we have an understanding of how this force works and how pervasive it is. Television is a powerful force. Television is a plug-in drug. I refer to television as electronic crack.
Yes.
So if television is a drug, then we have to begin to understand the effects of this drug on us. And when I talk about the media, I'm talking about television, film, radio, and print. These are the most powerful means of mind control and manipulation ever devised. They determine what we see, how we think, they determine what we hear, and they affect us on multiple levels, whether we are conscious of it or not. So I'm going to give you some examples of how we are affected by the media, and then begin to explore ways that we can neutralize its effects in our lives. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Because I'm not here just to talk. This is the teaching session. Right? And at the appropriate point, it's going to be good to get some feedback from you so that we can make sure that everything was clearly understood. Right? So then, television includes cable television, DVDs, computers, PDAs, and cell phones. Because now the media has become so sophisticated that with a little phone, an iPhone here, I can do things now that you couldn't do just 10 years ago. I can carry movies, I can watch television programs, I can access the internet, I can do a whole host of things. I can watch music videos. And so the ability to carry medium with you is becoming easier and easier as technology advances. When we talk about the effects of television, let's look at, from a scientific approach, how television affects us. The average person spends 29 hours and 4 minutes per week watching television. And by the time most people reach the age of 70, they will have spent anywhere from 7 to 10 years of their lives watching television. And that internalization of this media, this force, is going to affect you in many ways. Specifically, television is one of the main catalysts for the aggressive behavior that we see in our children today. And so there are 4 specific areas that we want to talk about. Imitation. People who watch television are influenced by what they see, and they imitate the behavior and the personalities and the dress and the possessions that people on television have. So they want to be like them, even though they may not have the education or the economic means to live that lifestyle. So young folk are watching music videos all the time. They're seeing Jay-Z, they're seeing all these folk living this lifestyle, and they want to live that lifestyle, but they never graduated from high school. They don't have the qualifications, yet they want to get paid. So they'll do whatever they feel is justified in their limited minds to achieve things that are not meant for them. It desensitizes people. If you're watching shootings on television every day, if you're watching people being beaten every day, if you're watching people being cursed out every day, then you begin to believe that that's normal behavior. That becomes your reality. Normative socialization process. Attitudes and actions end up being defined as socially acceptable. Again, if we look at what's happening to this current generation, we see children who have grown up on the media. They are not like youth of my generation or the generation that followed me. There's a different breed of youth, young people today, because they have grown up. The young people today, people under the age of 18, do not know what life was like when you had to get up from your sofa and walk to the television and change the station. They don't know what life was like before cable. So they have been programmed to think, to speak, to act differently. And vicarious reinforcement of deviant behavior is implanted into the minds of youth who play these destructive, violent, pornographic video games, or who watch videos which demean women, which demean human beings. And again, you accept that. You see it over and over again, so it becomes your reality. And television is the primary conduit for the destruction of the human mind. So let's look at some of the hazards of television viewing. And again, this information comes from scientific documentation. So this is not Tony Browder giving you his opinion. I'm a researcher, so I search the data, analyze it, and then present it to folks. Television has a debilitating effect on the mind and body. Television makes you lazy. And in the States, we have now a generation of children who spend more time sitting on their butts watching television than playing outside, getting fresh air and exercising their bodies. And as a consequence, there's been a dramatic increase in childhood obesity. Hand in hand with that, you've got children now eating outside of the home more than they eat in the home. So they spend their money at McDonald's or Burger King. Food that is not designed for human consumption. And they wind up getting fatter and fatter and fatter. So much so that physicians, pediatricians in the States have determined that children around the age of 12 are exhibiting the late symptoms of diabetes that adults would normally begin to show at around the age of 40. So they're now beginning to advise parents to limit a child's television viewing habits. They're now beginning to advise parents to allow your child to only eat fast food once a week instead of every day. And television is the medium that sells these products to our children. Television produces alpha waves in the brain which produce a hypnotic effect. Remember, I referred to you that television is electronic crack. It's a drug. It is a plug-in drug. And people who watch a lot of television become addicted to television because television makes you feel good. It gives you something to think about. It gives you something to look forward to. It gives you something to talk about the next day in school, at work. And when people don't watch television, their lives feel empty. My mother has a very bad habit, which I have not been able to get her out of. She has a very bad habit of watching television when she's in bed, and thus she falls asleep with the television on. And if I come in, if I'm in the house and I'll see her, she's asleep and with the television on, and if I come into her room and turn the television off, as soon as I turn the television off, she wakes up because I'm interrupting her high. You ever notice when children are watching television? They are glued to the television. They are fixated to those images and those sounds, and you can call them to come in. You call them 3, 4, 5 times. They don't hear you because they're getting their fix. Just like a junkie doesn't hear you when you're trying to tell them that what they're doing is wrong, or tell them that they need to see things differently. Television places artificial images in the mind's eye. It alters your perception of reality. Children see people killed in a movie or shot 3, 4, 5 times in a movie. Next scene, they're up walking in brown. Like these effects aren't permanent. And so children in the States have guns. They shoot other children. And when they shoot folk, they really don't think that that person is going to die because they don't see that death on television. They have a different reality. Children watching large amounts of television have a higher incidence of attention deficit disorder. That has been scientifically proven. So with this onset of ADD, it is directly related to the amount of television that children watch. We'll talk about more specific aspects of that. Television is advertising. Television is advertising. It is a medium whose sole purpose is to promote capitalism. Now, for the most part, if you don't have cable, television is free. Radio is free. And we should understand very clearly that ain't nothing in the capitalistic society free. If someone is giving you something free, it's only because you are paying for it in ways that you don't truly comprehend. What sells television? Why is television free? Because advertising pays for television. Advertisers buy slots for every television program. And they give it away free because they know that these commercials are designed to make you want things. When I was a junior in college, I spent a summer working at an advertising agency in Chicago, my hometown Chicago. And it was one of the best jobs I ever had. Didn't have to do a lot of work. I worked with writers, I worked with directors, I worked with photographers, and it was interesting just to sit in the room and listen to these men, basically white men, sit around and come up with concepts for ads. And when it was real slow, when the work was real slow, I would go up to the studio and watch commercials all day long. It's a great job. But one of the things that I learned from that experience is that people are devising and producing commercials anywhere from 4 to 6 months before you see them. They design advertising campaigns for magazines, for newspapers, for billboards, 4 to 6 months before you see them. So I felt empowered to be sitting in on these meetings with these people who were talking about things that were going to affect everybody else. And I knew what was coming before they did. So the people who make these decisions don't look like the people in this room. And their only concern is making money, getting you to feel the need to buy something that you don't need with money that you don't have. That's the nature of advertising. And so every advertiser knows that before you can convince anyone of anything, you must shatter their existing mindset and then restructure an awareness along lines that are useful to you, the advertiser. And you do this with a few very simple techniques, like fast-moving images, jump editing, which are all designed to change your mood. And if you notice the average television program doesn't use a stationary tripod. They use a handheld camera, which gives you the illusion that you are there. You are right there in the room with them. You are part of the action. And this technique that was really advanced by MTV and music videos, jump editing, where you don't see one image on the screen for more than, say, 5 seconds. Next time you watch television. I mean, really watch television and notice every scene, how every scene changes, when every scene changes. And the average scene does not stay on the screen for more than 5 seconds. So what that means is that your mind is being programmed to now respond to one thing after another, after another, after another, after another, and so you cannot focus your attention for an extended period of time. And it takes greater flow of energy to stimulate your interest. That is why children today can't sit down in the classroom, because their attention span has been shortened by these techniques that have been prominent in the media within the last 20 years. And we all are affected by it, whether we are conscious of it or not. Have you ever noticed how difficult it is to sit down and read a book? You open a book and you read the first paragraph, and the next thing you know, your mind is wandering off and you're thinking about what you did at work, 4 hours ago. And then you catch yourself, you bring yourself back to the book and you read the next paragraph, and now you're thinking about, what am I going to have for dinner? You can't focus. The ability to concentrate has been minimized because of the media, our internalization of this force, which has literally rewired our brains. So the horror of television is that the information goes in our eyes and in our ears, and consequently goes into our brain. It goes right into our unconscious memory, and we react to it later. We don't know what we're reacting to oftentimes, and we don't know where these thoughts come from. So again, if you have children and you notice that all of a sudden their behavior is absurd, they're doing things that they have never done before. They're saying things that they have never said before. And you have to stop and ask yourself, what has gotten into my child? You leave that child with that one-eyed monster, and that child's life is going to be turned upside down, and you're going to pay for it. Your community is going to pay for it. Your school is going to pay for it. So these are issues that we just can't treat superficially. We have to understand what we're exposed to, and we have to become responsible. So what I want to look at now is the power of marketing. And specifically, I want to look at Africans in the print media, how we are viewed by the media. And again, I stated that most of the people who control advertising and marketing don't look like us, and they have certain perceptions of us which are dominant in the media. So you must be aware of that so that you can better determine how you're going to respond to their perceptions of us. So I want to share with you a couple of ads that were prominent in the States, but are relevant to you all here, because everything that happens in the States ultimately makes its way around the world. So if it hasn't hit you yet, I'm giving you a heads up so that you can begin to prepare for what is coming. Now, you all just got BET recently, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, years ago? All right. All right. I was talking with someone earlier, and they were saying that the BET London was something that is new. But the thing is, we need to understand very clearly that BET is not black education television. It is black enslavement television. BET. And BET is not owned by a black person anymore. Actually, it never really was owned. Robert Johnson was a front man for the white folk who financed him. And he sold BET to Viacom. So BET is not a black-owned medium anymore. but it has programs designed to target the black audiences all over the world. And I guarantee you, wherever black BET is, you will see a corresponding increase in destructive behavior among adolescents and a dramatic increase in violence, crime, and imprisonment. I'd love to see someone here, psychologists or sociologists, do the research on that. You will find a direct correlation between BET and the destruction of black communities. So I want to share with you a couple of examples of Africans in the print media. 1994, O.J. Simpson was arrested for murdering his wife and his wife's friend. And when he was arrested, the LA Police Department took a mugshot of him. And that mugshot was circulated throughout the world. Television, newspapers, magazines. And in one particular instance, in the same week, O.J. Simpson's mugshot was prominently placed on the cover of two national magazines in the United States, Time magazine and Newsweek magazine. I want you to look at these two covers, which were on the newsstands at the same time. What do you see? One is darker and one is lighter. Okay? So many people saw this dramatic difference in the same image that they began to call and write letters to the editors of Time magazine, accusing them of being racist. Because in America, as I'm sure the same situation exists here, in America, the system of justice for white is innocent until proven guilty. In America, if you're black, you're guilty until proven innocent. And so since white folk love them some OJ, love OJ, because OJ always has had a thing for white women. And he's always ingratiated himself to the white community. So they love some OJ. But when OJ killed that white woman, his white wife, and her white friend, they turned on him. And so the editors of Time magazine darkened his image in order to make O.J. Simpson a black man again. So many people saw this, called and wrote letters to Time magazine that in the following issue, the editor of Time, Jim Gaines, wrote in the editorial that it was not their desire to darken the image of O.J. Simpson to imply that he was guilty. All right? Then he went on to say, to the extent to which you are offended, we apologize. Now, do you understand that coded message? All right, this magazine is geared toward white folk. White folk now perceive O.J. Simpson as a black man who is guilty of crimes before he goes to court, before he has his day in court. And it's only black folk who really keyed on this and objected to it that they felt a need to apologize to, only because we expressed our displeasure. But what I also want you to notice is that they intentionally made the size of the numbers smaller in order to focus your attention on him, on what they referred to as an American tragedy, because they thought O.J. was an honorary white man. He acted like one until he turned on them. And so O.J. Simpson, as we know, was found innocent. And the truth of the matter is, most folk in the black community knew O.J. was guilty. And we really don't give a damn about O.J. because O.J. Simpson turned his back on the black community a long time ago. But we wanted him to get off simply because of the fact that black folk have always been convicted of crimes that they were innocent of. So we wanted him to get off. And we were happy when he got off. White folk were upset, and they were still upset. They have been after O.J. ever since he was found innocent, 13 years ago. They've been after him. The Goldman family, the family of the white man who was killed, Ron Goldman. The Goldman family, after O.J. was found innocent, filed a wrongful death suit, and O.J. was found guilty the wrongful death suit, which is for several millions of dollars. So what O.J. did was rechanneled his funds, directed his money to his children, so he was bankrupt and he had no money to pay them. And so they've been after him for years. So that 2 years ago, a white woman did an interview with O.J. Simpson and asked him during the interview, if you had murdered Nicole and Ron, how would you have done it? And so she was publishing a book and made arrangements for an interview, a televised interview, entitled, and the book was entitled, If I Did It. But notice they highlighted the last three words, I did it. All right? And so the Goldman family was so upset at O.J. Simpson, and I think they paid him $1 million for this interview to tell his story. They were so upset that they objected to this woman and O.J. Simpson profiting from the death of their son. And they registered their complaints such that the publishing company that they had the agreement with for the book dropped the book. The book had already been printed. They had printed something like 400,000 copies. And they burned all of those copies. The white woman who conducted the interview and made arrangements to have a television program lost her job. Okay? Because they were uncomfortable with how the media was being used to lift up a man that they knew was a criminal. And then Mr. Goldman decided that since we still can't get any money from O.J., he secured the rights to the book and then published the book so that the royalties would come to him. Huh? And as you all probably know, O.J. Simpson was just convicted about 2 weeks ago of armed robbery in Las Vegas. And he's due to be sentenced any week now. And he is potentially facing life in prison for armed robbery. And the Las Vegas police officers who arrested him said, the white Las Vegas police officers who arrested him said, we finally got him. Okay? Now, let me share with you another ad. What do you see in this ad? This was an ad that was produced by Benetton, the Italian clothing company, whose slogan is the United Colors of Benetton. And their marketing campaign is to always use shock advertising. Controversy always sells. There's no such thing as bad publicity, if you understand marketing. So this was an ad that was produced in the States in the mid-1980s. Very prominently displayed in billboards and at bus stops all throughout the city. What do you see when you look at this ad?
Angel and devil.
An angel and a devil. A blonde hair, blue eyes.
Supposedly.
Look at the symbolism. Let's just deal with the symbolism. All right? Let's just deal with the symbolism. You see a blonde hair, blue eyed, white girl with a very angelic expression on her face next to a child of African ancestry. You can't even tell the sex of this child, but what you can tell is that the hair has been intentionally cut in the shape of horns to reinforce the negative perception that black is evil, white is good and godly. Okay? This ad ran for several years in the States, and no black organization expressed their displeasure at how we were being treated. So that a couple of years ago, Benetton ran this ad. Now, this doesn't look offensive in any way, does it? You see a black person, you know, holding the peace sign. There's nothing negative about this. But let me show you the other part of the ad. All right? So, I'm from America, all right? And the idea of a white person holding a whip next to a black person does not sit well with my person. You all heard the term cracker?
Yeah.
Right? The term cracker comes from the fact that the white man had the whip and he constantly cracked the whip on our back. So I see a cracker standing next to a sister. That's one thing. And you notice the placement of the hands. When you see photographs like this, when you see ads in television or hear ads on the radio, every element of that advertisement is intentional. There are no accidents. Everything that you see is there for a specific purpose. And so the mere fact that the white woman is holding the whip is not coincidental. And the black person is saying, peace, can we all just get along? Yeah. Peace and love, my brother. But notice the placement of the hands. The black woman's hands is in the white girl's pocket as if she's about to steal something from her. And the white person's hand is on her shoulder as if to say, I caught you red-handed. You see that? You see that? It's no accident. And, now this is just conjecture, but I want you all to look at this. Are these the same people? They could be. I don't know. But they could be. You know, 10 years later, Bennington could have gotten the same actors, the same models, and used them to perpetuate the same racist stereotypes. So, knowing this, why would you ever shop at Bennington? Knowing this. But if you don't know, oh, Bennington's got some nice items on sale, I'm going down to Bennington. What you don't know will destroy you. So now, briefly, I want to look at Africans in film. How we have been portrayed in films. We got a couple of films I just want to touch on. You know, I could do an entire lecture just on that, but I've got a couple of issues that I want to bring to your attention so that we can become aware of things that we may not have been conscious of. Okay? So, one example, movie Barbershop, which came out years ago. Hated it. It was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. Why? Because I'm from Chicago, and the movie took place in my hometown, Chicago. And as an African-American male, I am sick and tired of seeing brothers portrayed as con men, as hustlers, as thieves, as pimps, as dope dealers, as everything negative. I'm sick and tired of it. I refuse to stand for it. And so to see this film, Anthony Johnson in this film just got out of jail, and the film opens with he and his partner stealing an ATM machine, and then they spend the rest of the movie trying to break into the ATM machine. The Barbershop, which Ice Cube inherited from his father. It was his father's business, which he passed on to his son. And his son is such a poor businessman that he's about to lose the business, and he's in secret negotiations with this hustler who's going to turn the barbershop into a strip club. Now, what does that say about him honoring his father's legacy, his father's hard work? I'm sick and tired of white folk writing scripts that depict us at our worst, and we pay to be offended.
Yes.
He had this brother here played an African. And he was the butt of everybody's jokes in the barbershop. So again, it reinforces the fact that if you are African, you are less than. You are inferior, even in the eyes of people who are supposedly inferior and less than. But I want you to think about this aspect of the film before I get to the major point in the film. In the film, in the barbershop, black folk do what black folk always do. Black men do what black men always do in the barbershop, because this is our domain. And black men are truthful with each other to some extent. We talk about each other. We rag on each other. So they spent the entire film talking about each other, beating each other down, playing the dozens like we do. But if you notice, the only person in the film who got an apology was the white boy who worked in the barbershop. So the message, the subconscious message that it sends to any child watching this film who doesn't understand the larger dynamics of the world in which we live, that the only person worthy of an apology is the white man. Okay? So I take film seriously because I understand what is involved in making the film. But we flocked to this movie, made it a best-selling film. And in fact, controversy sells. So there were two controversial points in this film that were the talk of talk radio throughout the black community. And the controversy centered around Cedric the Entertainer's character, who played the elder in the barbershop. And his first comment had to do with Rosa Parks. Oh man, she didn't do nothing important. Oh, her feet just hurt. That's why she sat down and didn't give up her seat. Why would any person in their right mind disparaged the mother of the civil rights movement. If you were conscious, if you were committed, you would never allow your icons, your sheroes, to be disparaged. But we did it and we laughed about it and we paid to be insulted. So what does that say about our consciousness? So I want you all to really begin to understand that, contrary to what you have been programmed to believe, don't look to African Americans to follow our lead because we are crazy. And most of us don't know that we are crazy. And our craziness is being exported all over the world. And you all then become crazy, imitating the behavior of folk who are crazy and don't even know that they're crazy. Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton objected to the demeaning of Rosa Parks, but the ultimate insult in this film, the ultimate insult in this film of insults came at the very end of the film. After everything had been worked out, the last scene in the film was Cedric the Entertainer talking about Martin Luther King. Talking about Martin Luther King's so-called sex habits as reported by the FBI, which take conversations and other things and then put out information to discredit him. And he ends the movie by saying, oh, Martin Luther King, he wasn't nothing serious. He was all about getting laid. That's all he was interested in, getting laid. That was the last scene in the movie. So, you had Jesse Jackson, you had Al Sharpton expressing their displeasure to this. And so it made it a controversial issue. Now, in advertising and marketing, there's no such thing as bad publicity. And all this did was make more unconscious black folk want to see this film to see what the fuss was all about. So it made it the highest grossing film the week that it came out. This film made so much money that they went on to make a barbershop too. Huh? But just think about it. If no black folk went to see this film, or if a limited number of black folk saw this film and the producers didn't make their money, they wouldn't make any more films like this. So you determine how you're going to be treated based on how you spend your money. But if you don't understand that and you give your money to anybody who insults you, if you don't even understand when you're being insulted, folk will make millions and millions of dollars off of your ignorance. Now, Cedric the Entertainer, who is a quasi-talented brother, I mean, he's somewhat funny. He can sing, but he never has been able, he's had about 3 or 4 television programs. He's been in a number of movies. But if you think about it, I mean, he's never made a really meaningful impact, but he keeps getting jobs. Why? Because he is of useful service to the white community, people who control the media. And so, the year after Barbershop came out, Cedric the Entertainer was designated to be the MC, the Master of Ceremonies for the NAACP National Image Award Program, which was aired on Fox Television. Now think about this. National Association, NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, is the oldest African-American civil rights organization in the country, in the United States of America. All right? And there's some issues I have with the NAACP, but just look at it as an organization. Right? It was founded by white folk, basically founded by white folk, financed by white folk. But Cedric the Entertainer was hired to MC this show. After he made those disparaging remarks about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King. Now, what kind of sense does that make? What it means is, it's an illustration of who finances the NAACP. Because it costs money to air a 2-hour program on primetime television. And the program was aired on Fox Television. And Fox is racist, right-wing media. They have never done anything positive in behalf of black folk. So it costs money to air a 2-hour program, and I can just imagine, I don't have the proof to substantiate this, but based on what I've seen, I can just imagine the president of Fox contacting the president of the NAACP, telling them that we're willing to broadcast your National Image Awards program free of charge. But we want Cedric the Entertainer to be the MC. And they went along with the okie doke. And what was truly sad was that Julian Bond, who was the interim president of the NAACP at that time, Julian Bond is a stalwart figure within the American Civil Rights Movement, African American Civil Rights Movement. Very brilliant young man who made some serious mistakes later on in life, and he was given opportunities to recover. But Julian Bond, as the interim president of the NAACP at the time of this incident, allowed Cedric the Entertainer to MC this program. And when Rosa Parks, who had been a member of the NAACP pretty much all of her life, she was the secretary for the NAACP in Montgomery, Alabama, when she was arrested for refusing to give up her seat. That's one of the reasons why they rallied around her, and they used her as the model to begin the Montgomery bus boycott, which launched the career of a 25-year-old unknown minister by the name of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and set in motion the civil rights movement. See, because Rosa Parks was not the first black person to be arrested.
That's correct.
For giving up her seat. The first woman who was arrested was a woman who drank a little bit. She was a woman who had a child out of wedlock, so the NAACP felt that she was not the right person to rally around.
She had a darker complexion as well, my brother.
Okay, so Rosa Parks, light skin, straight hair, becomes the model. All right, everything is political. We need to understand that everything is political. All right. So then, when Rosa Parks heard that Cedric the Entertainer was hired to MC the NAACP Image Awards, she said that she was not coming. And they always lifted her up as the mother of the civil rights movement. Do you know what Julian Bond said? She's an old woman. It doesn't matter. Okay? It doesn't matter. So what that tells us is that, you know, we are constantly sold out. What great films has Cedric the Entertainer ever been in? You can't think of one. And yet he, like Whoopi Goldberg, always gets these film roles. Always gets these roles. Why? Because he has agreed to sell his soul. And so his last film was called The Cleaner, where he played this janitor who believes that he's a CIA agent. And in one scene, one clip from this film, we see him as we see African people of consciousness depicted in the media wearing red, black, and green, or wearing kente cloth, or wearing mud cloth, or wearing an African medallion. Anyone who wears symbols or acts in a conscious manner is always disparaged in film. In other words, it's designed to reinforce the stereotype, you into that black stuff, and that ain't gonna get you nowhere. Okay? I'm glad you all agree. Okay. It's good to be around a lot of black folks for a change, isn't it? So let that spirit flow. That's all right. That's all right. Queen Latifah. Queen Latifah has played has played a similar role. Her movie, Bringing Down the House, was the highest grossing black film in history. The highest grossing black movie in history.
Today.
Yes, sir. And so the issue of the highest grossing black comedy, let me be specific, black comedy, right? And so again, what role did she play in that film? She was a convict. She was out on parole, all right? And she was hustling Steve Martin's character, and this other white guy had a thing for her, all right? So black folk who agreed to allow themselves to be depicted in a demeaning manner will always be given jobs by white folk. They will always be gainfully employed. And we have to understand that. And if we don't like it, you don't see their films. I mean, it's real simple. You don't support them. It's real simple. So, Queen Latifah then starred in Barbershop 2. And then she was inserted in the film in order to prepare her for her own series. It was supposed to be a series, Beauty Shop. But Beauty Shop made so little money that they didn't follow up on that. See, but the thing is, they'll get something, they'll get an idea, and as long as we are stupid enough to pay to be insulted, they will continue to roll out films that continue to insult you until you prove to them that you no longer are willing to buy that BS. So how you spend your money determines the extent to which you will be insulted. So let me ask you a question. What was John Singleton's lowest grossing film?
Poison Ivy.
No, that was his first film. That was the film that put him in the spotlight on an international stage. All right? And that was probably his highest grossing film today. But what was his lowest grossing film?
Higher Learning.
No, not Higher Learning. Higher Learning did pretty good. Boys in the Hood made him a millionaire. Boys in the Hood was good. His lowest grossing film.
It must be that same one there.
Huh?
Welcome to Rosewood, no?
Yes, ma'am. His lowest grossing film was Rosewood. Rosewood. Now, some of you all may not know about Rosewood, but Rosewood was based on a historical incident that occurred in Florida, 1923. It was a town. This is what, 3 generations after the end of slavery, in the height of American apartheid. Black folk are rebuilding their communities. Living in segregated America, we had thriving black communities with black schools, black churches, black hotels, black doctors, black dentists. And in the 1920s, there was a spate of white racists moving through the black community, destroying black communities, left and right, left and right. So Rosewood was one such community which was destroyed. And 99.9% of African Americans didn't know anything at all about Rosewood until the movie came out. All right? Now, what's interesting is that, I guess around 8 years ago, the state legislature in Florida met to examine this incident of Rosewood. And essentially we had the entire town, I forget how many hundreds of productive black folk lived in that town. The entire town was burned to the ground.
Tulsa.
All right. Well, Tulsa's in Oklahoma. That's another story, and it occurred a year earlier. All right. But that entire town was burned to the ground. John Singleton made a film about this story. Now, Ving Rhames' character in the film was not a historically accurate personality, but he used him as an image to represent how black men fought to save their wives, save their children, save their community. It was a powerful film, very powerful film. And so I'm not surprised that you all haven't heard about it. So when the movie finally came out on DVD, I wanted to examine the film so I could do a lecture on it back in D.C. So I went down to Blockbuster. You all have Blockbusters here, right? Went down to Blockbuster to get the film, walked in the store, and I'm walking around looking for the video on the shelf. I couldn't find it. So I went to the clerk at the desk and said, "Excuse me, where's Rosewood?" "Oh, we've been instructed to keep it behind the counter." Like, wait a minute now. Rosewood probably didn't make more than $3 million in the box office. So, you know, and John Singleton, when the movie was out, John Singleton at the NAACP Image Awards, as he was one of the presenters of awards, he literally stood at the microphone and begged black folk to go and see this movie, because he talked about the fact that the first weekend that the film is out is when producers determine whether or not they're going to give the director any more money for future films. The first weekend is the most important weekend in a film director's life, in an actor's life, all right? Because it determines whether or not that film is going to have legs, and it also determines whether or not other theaters will pick up the film. If it's making money, they want it in their theater because they want to make money. If it's not making money, we'll take, you know, Friday the 13th part 27 instead, because that sells. So he was begging black folk to see this film, to support his telling our story. A dramatic, historically accurate story. But we didn't support it, which meant that he never had an opportunity to make another movie like this. All right? And so I went to Blockbusters, and they were instructed to keep the movie behind the cashier. behind the front counter. Why? I said, well, nobody's going to steal the movie because nobody went to see it. But he said, this is what we were told to do. So I rented the film, went home, watched the film, and, took my notes, prepared for this presentation. And whenever I'm watching films, the artist in me is always conscious of the work that artists put into producing a film. See, the public fixates on the actors. But if you ever notice, the average film may have 5 to a dozen key actors. But it's the director, it's the producer, it's the line grip, it's the cameraman, it's the sound man, it's the engineer, it's the designer. It's those hundreds of names that roll on the screen at the end of the movie who make the movie possible. So I always take note of who was involved in any production so that I can see who does good work and who does, so-so work. And so I watched the credits, as I always do, and at the end of the credits, there was this image that came up on the screen. Blockbuster Customer Satisfaction Guarantee. If anything in this film offended you, return it to Blockbusters with your receipt and we will give you a full refund. I said, oh my God. I've never seen that in any film that I rented from Blockbuster, because I rented a bunch of films that I wish I could have got my money back. But this was the only time. So I went back, I took the film back to Blockbusters, and I asked the guy at the counter, I said, are you aware of the Blockbusters Customer Satisfaction Guarantee? He said, I've never heard of that. And I told him what was on the tape. He said, I've never seen that before. And so what that means is that customer satisfaction guarantee is for white folk. If you are uncomfortable seeing a film where black people defend themselves against racists and kill white racists, if that upsets you, then you can get a refund for this film. So what we did was we organized not a boycott. We encouraged folks, went on a couple of radio shows and encouraged people to go to Blockbusters, rent the film, and then send your receipt to Blockbuster and tell them you wanted a refund because we were accusing them of cinematic apartheid. All right? So, that's how you express your displeasure. You've got to act. When people do wrong, you have to say something. And you have to say it intelligently and articulately so that they will respond to your request and not just view you as a quack. These are strategies that have to be devised in order for you to accomplish the things that will benefit you, your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren. And if you aren't thinking 7 generations after you, then you're not thinking at all. All right? You're not thinking at all. So, let's move on. Let's deal with this concept that was referenced in a Washington Post article several years ago. It was an article that essentially was a critique of black films. And the article was entitled The Magic Negro. And I felt so good reading this article because it reinforced all of my perceptions of the media. This writer for the Post, his sister, had basically saw the same things that I had seen. And she was able to get an article published. And this was a cartoon that accompanied the article. Me all-powerful, black, god-like figure. And you a pathetic, underachieving white moron. Regardless, me the servant and you the master. Right? And there's a director sitting in his chair and said, this is so spiritually moving, so non-racist, I'm all choked up. These black folk giving them scenes in films. All right, so this concept of the Magic Negro, who or what is the Magic Negro in film? Well, God Almighty, remember the films God Almighty? When a poor, underachieving white folk comes to his wit's end, then God, in the person of Morgan Freeman, dressed in all white, comes to his aid and helps him out. Jim Carrey was in the follow-up, God Almighty Part 2. And again, same thing, same scene. You have a poor, pathetic white person, underachieving white person, and God comes in and gives him his powers to make his life better. Another example of the Magic Negro, Morpheus in the Matrix. Morpheus came to Neo's assistance, rescued Neo from the Matrix because Morpheus has been looking for him all his life. Why? Because Neo, you are the one. You're the one who's going to save humanity. Neo didn't believe it, so he took him to the Oracle, a sister. Huh? The Matrix, I want you all to understand, the Matrix was about us. The story, The Matrix, was written by a sister, Sophia Stewart. And the script was lifted by the Wachowski brothers. And she wound up suing them and has won a lawsuit for something like $400 million. And I don't know if she'll ever collect. Yeah, she won the lawsuit, but I don't know, it's in appeals now, so I don't know if she'll ever collect. But it was a story that she wrote as a favor to Muhammad Ali to give a positive depiction of black men. And so originally, the role of Neo was offered to Will Smith. But he turned it down because he was shooting the Wild Wild West, one of the biggest mistakes of his career. But just imagine the effects of the Matrix if Morpheus was there. Lawrence Fishburne is Morpheus. Will Smith is Neo. Gloria Foster is the Oracle. That means a sister would have been Trinity. That movie was all about us. All about us. Bring it down the house. We got another Magic Negro. Whoopi Goldberg and Ghost. All right. Whoopi Goldberg and Ghost. The Magic Negro. Whoopi Goldberg won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for Ghost. They reward you when we play the roles that make them comfortable. Will Smith in a film called The Legend of Bagger Vance, where he played this mythological figure who comes to the aid of Matt Damon, who was it was a period piece. Matt Damon was a veteran of the war, and he was shell shocked. He was suffering from some emotional issues. He was a golfer, and he couldn't get his game on and couldn't get the girl. But Will Smith, you see him walking to the golf course, steps out of this fog, and he comes into Matt Damon's life, and he helps resurrect the spirit of Tiger Woods in this white man. And he wins the golf tournament, he wins the white girl, and then Will Smith disappears back into the mist. It's a Magic Negro. Green Mile. Remember that, the Green Mile?
Yes.
John Coffey, this big, strong black man, is in jail for murdering white girls. But yet it's while he's in jail that the jailer, Tom Hanks, discovers that he's got the ability to heal you just by touching you. He's got the ability to bring back the dead. The mouse died and he brought the mouse back to life. And they spirited him out of the prison so that he could heal this jailer's wife. He healed her. But John Coffey was executed. John Coffey, JC, was executed. This healer, this miracle worker, was executed just like JC, Jesus the Christ, was executed. He was the Magic Negro. And then the magician of all Negroes, the greatest of all black magicians, Halle Berry. Monsters Ball. Monsters Ball. And think about it in the film. I hated that film. Hated it with a passion. Why? Because, number one, Halle Berry can't act. I can't think of one film. I can't think of one film she ever acted in. And I like movies. I mean, I like good writing. I like good directing. I like good acting. I like good films. But I can't think of one film that she's ever been in that I walked out of the theater saying, she did good. But what she did in this film, again, a film written by two white boys, two Europeans. They shopped it around in Hollywood for years. And it was an independent film. The film didn't make more than $10 million in the box office. Yet Halle Berry wins an Oscar. Wins an Oscar by having a sexual relationship on screen with the white jailer who executed her husband. All right? Executed her husband. And in the film, her husband, P. Diddy, is a criminal, worthless. She's got a son at home, a big fat child. She complains about being so fat and lazy, and she beats him up because he's hiding candy under the sofa as he's sitting down watching television. She's got him on a diet. So all the black men in her life give her grief. And yet the white man who kills her husband comes in the scene, who's a racist.
Yes.
But they get their groove on, and in that sex scene where she bears it all, make me feel good. Make me feel good. And she wins an Oscar for fulfilling white men's fantasies. Okay? So, I mean, we have to be honest in our critique of the images that we see that come out of Hollywood. Understand this institution. Hollywood. The 74th Annual Academy Awards, which took place on March the 24th, 2002, was groundbreaking. Groundbreaking for a number of reasons. One, Whoopi Goldberg was the MC, but Halle Berry and Denzel Washington won the Best Actor and Best Actress Award for the first time in the 74 years of the Academy Award history. Halle Berry won the Academy Award for playing a hoe. The first actress in the Academy who won an Academy Award for a nude scene. Denzel Washington won a Best Actor for playing a crooked cop. Now, I love me some Denzel. One of the best actors around. One of the best actors around. Denzel should have got the Oscar for Malcolm X. Should have got the Oscar for Training Day. The white folk will never reward a black man for playing a positive, strong, uplifting role. Why? Because that's not the image, that's not the perception that they want your children to internalize and model. So he played a crooked cop, and played him well, played him too good. This almost made me like his character. But at his core, he was evil. At its core, he was wrong. And did you notice Denzel's face when he came up to accept that award? He wasn't happy. He wasn't being like Halle was doing. Oh my God, I want to thank. Denzel just came up and he was cool because he knew this is business. And he knew that the following year, his directorial debut was going to come out. And maybe winning this Oscar would cause more people to come to the theater to see him. His directorial debut was Antoine Fisher. One of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. As a black man, I cried when I watched that film. It touched me in my heart. And if you haven't seen it, you need to see it to support Denzel Washington. All right? Because if we support him, then he will get more funds to produce more movies like that. It was powerful movie. Powerful movie. And so, I remember I was talking about Halle Berry, and I made reference to the fact that she got rewarded for being a hoe. And she was the first woman to receive an Oscar for playing a whore. And some white woman called me up on a radio show and said, well, I beg to differ with you, but Kim Basinger won Best Actress Award for Hollywood Confidential. Hollywood Confidential was a good movie. Great acting, great writing, great direction. But I said, okay, you're right, but Kim Basinger played a prostitute, a high-end prostitute. And she never took her clothes off. Case closed. Case closed. So we have to understand that Hollywood will only reward us when we are at our worst, which means that Hollywood is not working for our benefit. So Jet Magazine was very excited. Jet Magazine is one of the most popular Negro publications in the United States. And I mean that literally. It is a Negro publication. And they talked about all of the 8 African Americans who won Academy Awards in the 74-year history of the Academy. Do you realize that 80% of the awards were won within the last 4 years? Within the last 4 years. So what does that mean? It means that Hollywood, it means the media has elevated its attack against us. Because now we are in films. Before, we weren't allowed to be in films. Before, they would have white folk in blackface play us. Or the only roles that we could play was Stephen Fetcher. Yes, I was doing the best I can. Stereotypes. But now that we finally got in and are playing roles of note, then they have to acknowledge us, so they will only acknowledge us when we're at our worst. With one exception. Well, I'll get to that exception in a minute. Because the assault continues. 2005, Hustle and Flow. Another film about black folk, written and directed by a white man. A film about a pimp going through a midlife crisis, deciding that it's time to get out of the pimp game and make a career move and get into another form of pimping, and that's rapping. All right? Rapping. Okay? Now, the interesting thing is now, in the States, there is a radio station called NPR, National Public Radio. National Public Radio is like the American version of the BBC. It's liberally conservative. And all of the black shows that they have are black shows that make white people feel comfortable. Right? And there was one very prominent black announcer who had a show, but he quit because he accused NPR of being racist and how they scheduled him, because they had him on at 2 o'clock in the morning. Right? And so he quit and accused him of being racist. Now NPR has good news stories, and I listen to them quite frequently because I hear information on NPR that I don't hear on any other station. So they're a good source of news. But I had gone to Egypt in 2005, and when I came back listening to NPR, all of a sudden they're advertising Hustle and Flow. Now NPR is public radio, so there are no advertisements. But they're doing advertisements for Hustle and Flow. Why the hell are these white folk promoting this film about a black pimp? I mean, it is totally out of character. So obviously I said there is something else behind this film. There are other forces working behind this film. And I saw the film because I always have to critique the media. I saw the film and hated it. Hated it. Love, what's the brother's name? Terrence Howard. Love that. Terrence Howard is a brilliant actor. Brilliant actor. Love him as a person. Hated him in the movie. And then what happens at the Academy Awards? 3 6 Mafia wins an Oscar for Best Song, Is Hard Out Here for a Pimp. Now wait a minute, what the hell does that mean? If you listen to the other songs that were nominated for Best Song, they were songs of substance. Songs of substance. But they gave the Oscar to these thugs, to these thieves, to these Negroes who sang a song glorifying the pimp life. What message does that send to our young boys? It tells them that you don't have to struggle to work hard to get an education, to be honest and truthful and loyal. You can be a pimp. You can be a dope dealer. You can be a gangster rapper, and you will be compensated by the white man. You will be compensated by Negroes who are out of their minds. So it distorts their values. We see this assault over and over and over again. It is unrelenting. Can you imagine Donny Hathaway, Duke Ellington, Bob Marley spinning in their graves when these Negroes won an Academy Award for Best Song? It is an insult to every serious black musician. So we've got to see what's happening. And then, Forrest Whitaker, another great actor, wins an Academy Award for The Last King of Scotland. And the same thing, NPR, which is National Public Radio, does not do advertising, ran advertisements for this movie, The Last King of Scotland. So 2 instances. Now they don't advertise, they don't promote anything that's black, but yet they promote 2 black movies that show us at our worst. Forrest Whitaker played Idi Amin. Great role. I mean, he's a great actor. Played Idi Amin, but The Last King of Scotland was a Scottish doctor who came to Uganda, met Idi Amin, and saved Idi Amin's life. So he appointed him the Minister of Health in his entire nation. Can you find an African who is competent? This white boy comes in out of nowhere, and then throughout the movie, Idi Amin has various scenes where he basically tells the white boy, tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. He is helpless. And this white man has to show him the way, has to save his life. And then the white man has a relationship with his wife. And then what does he do? He kills his wife. And the white boy gets away to write the story and have a film made about his exploits. And then Forrest Whitaker is given an Oscar for Best Actor. Do y'all see the pattern? Do you understand what is going on? So let's look at this. A brother who deserved the Oscar and got it rightfully, Jamie Foxx for Ray. Jamie Foxx was Ray Charles. Channeled his spirit. Great acting. Great script. Great direction. A wonderful film. You know, I acknowledge goodness when I see it. I acknowledge incorrectness when I see it. And because of the fact that Jamie Foxx did so well in this film, he elevated his game, elevated his profile. So he will never have to do a Living Color reunion. He will never have to do Booty Call Part 2. He will never have to play nigger roles again, because he has proven that he has skills. How many other black actors have skills but have not been given the opportunity?
Many.
Because we know that we excel at anything we do, good or bad, unfortunately. So given an opportunity to break into film or tennis or golf, we always rise to the top because that is who we are. And so we cannot expect our oppressors to finance our elevation. They are not going to do it. They will never do it. So let's look at some of the solutions to this dilemma. Let's look at how we can begin to turn some things around. Now, this is an article from 2005 in the Washington Post newspaper. And while it describes events in America, it relates to you. Because you all are about, I remember when I first came to the UK in the early 90s and had an opportunity to interact with the African community here, I saw that you all were about 15 years behind us. And that some of the same problems that we experienced, you all were beginning to experience. And that you could benefit from some of the solutions that we have applied so that you can minimize or avoid problems that are coming. You all have, I remember reading in the newspaper a couple of years ago about a spike in violent crimes and murders, gun crimes, that had Parliament and officials upset. So you all, because your children are watching the garbage, the pornography that comes out of America, they are emulating that behavior, and the crime is spiking. Even though guns are illegal here in the UK, we just happen to be the people who are killing themselves more than anybody else. That's not happening by accident. So let me just share some of these stats with you so that you can become conscious of what is going to be coming your way so that you can prepare for it. It's all about preparation. It's all about knowledge and then preparation. It says here, media use among today's youth. And in the States, there are primarily 3 ethnic groups. White Americans, Black Americans, and now Hispanic Americans. Hispanic Americans are Hispanic Americans are to us what Asians are to you all. You know, there's been a mass influx of Asians within the last couple of decades. And as I notice, as I drive around here, they own all the businesses in your community. So they are here because they fulfill an economic purpose. They serve as a buffer between white folk and you. Same thing that the Hispanics are doing in the United States. And based on a report that was released by the U.S. Census Department in August of this year, the U.S. Census Department adjusted their predictions for when white people will become a minority in the United States. They adjusted it from 2050 to 2042. And by 2042, Hispanics will become the dominant class of people in the United States. Hispanics right now, Hispanics 6 years ago became the #1 minority in the United States. So we are no longer #1, we're now #2. And if the trend continues, in about a decade or so, we will fall down to the #4 position because white folk will be a minority, they'll be ahead of us, and then Asians are coming in large numbers, so we're going to fall down to the #4 slot. So if we haven't achieved parity after 200 years as being the #1 minority, we sure aren't going to receive parity when we fall down to the #4 slot. So it's important to look at what's happening so that you can better determine what is coming your way and make decisions about how you can thrive in the years to come. So this data is based on white, Hispanic, and black population in the United States. So numerous media outlets that have invaded the bedrooms of children and teenagers, primarily a percentage of 8 to 16-year-olds with bedrooms containing CDs and tape players, 86% of the U.S. population. Radio, 84%. Television, 68%. DVDs and VCRs, 54%. Video game players, 49%. Cable television, 37%. A computer, 31%. Premium TV channels, the X-rated stuff, 20%. And internet access, 20%. Now, when you look at divided by ethnicity, the time spent with different types of media vary with ethnicity and economic status. So what you will see is that the average amount of time an 8 to 18-year-old spends per day watching television, in every classification, we watch more television than any other ethnic group in the United States, and we are at the bottom of every social and economic indicator. So in other words, the more television you watch, the worse you're going to do in school. The more television you watch, the more crime you're going to commit. The more television you watch, the unhealthier you are going to be. So we see here, the average African American watches over 4 hours of television. Now these stats are 3 years old, so it's a little bit more than that now. And in contrast with the growing Asian population, what we see is that Asians watch the least amount of television of any minority in the United States, and they excel in school in every grade level. So again, those who watch the least amount of television do best in school, get the best education, will get the best job, will make the most money, and will move up into the middle class and the upper middle class and thrive in America. The statistics don't lie. Playing video games, African Americans play more video games than anybody else within the country. Watching movies, we watch almost twice as much time watching movies than white folk, almost three times as much as white folk, and twice as much as Hispanics. So again, the more we expose ourselves to the media, the worse we're going to be. Many kids are exposed to content designed for older groups. Percentage of 7th to 12th graders who say they have never played Grand Theft Auto, 65%. So in other words, again, we see that the media has invaded our households and is mentally enslaving our children. These are the facts, and the facts don't lie. So, let's look at this. Let's begin to understand that we are living in the matrix. We are living in the matrix. And we have a choice. And the choice is, we can take the red pill, all right, which is awareness and consciousness, and free our minds, or we can take the blue pill and remain asleep in ignorance and be comfortable in our ignorance. We have always had a choice, whether we knew it or not, whether we exercised it or not. You always have a choice. So then, let's understand very clearly that the matrix is a metaphor for what is happening right now, not in the future, but what is happening right now. And all of us need to be about the business of freeing our minds, liberating ourselves. Without our senses, without our five senses, our sense of sound and smell and touch and sight and taste, our brain will be a prisoner in our minds. So our senses help us connect with our environment, help determine our reality. They are our senses, and we must use them for our benefit, not our oppressor's benefit. So the issue then becomes one where we have to understand very clearly that the average person, and the data has changed a little bit since I did this presentation a while ago, but the average person uses less than 5% of their brain. Think about that. You have the capacity, and as Emmanuel said in my introduction, I've been to Egypt. I've been to Egypt 41 times since 1980, right? And so I understand that we are descended from kings and queens. But we need to stop talking that if we're not going to start acting like it. Because it does us no good to say our ancestors were kings and queens if we're still living in the projects. All right? Begging somebody for a job. The ability for greatness exists within you. If you're not tapping into it, if you're not applying yourself, if you're not working 24/7 to free yourself, you need to shut up. That's where we are. Just because your ancestors did something doesn't mean anything if you aren't doing better. We can't stand on their shoulders and pick their pockets at the same time. So the average person uses less than 5% of their brain. Now just look at this. You have the capacity for 100% utilization of your greatest resource, and that we are comfortable using 5% or less. Imagine yourself as a businessman, and your employees came to work only 5% of the time. How long would you stay in business? So why do we accept this inferior relationship with our greatest resource, our minds? So if we use our minds less than 5% of the time, that is the equivalent of us being conscious, walking, talking, eating, breathing, acting with direct intent only 1 hour of every day for the rest of our lives. It's unacceptable. And if you knew that it was unacceptable and acted to change that relationship, you would see a corresponding relationship of every event in your life, and you would see a corresponding relationship with how your oppressor related to you. Because when you empower yourself, your oppressor cannot move against you. You neutralize them before they even think about what they're going to do to you. That's the power that you have. But it's not their job to teach you that power. It's not their job to show you how to use it and cultivate it. That's your responsibility. And you have to show it to your children. You don't send them to school to learn their history, because the school is designed to mentally incarcerate them. So you have to know your history and teach it to your children at home. Send them to school to learn to read and write and reason. And then you perform your work at home. But you can't do that if you're watching television. You can't do that if you're out at the club. You can't do that if you're forfeiting your responsibility as a parent. The minute you bring a child into the world, your personal relationships come to a halt if you are serious about this life that you brought into the world. And your obligation is to shepherd that child through the first 18 years of their life. That's what parenthood is all about. That's what a mother does. That's what a father does. And if you aren't doing that, you're shaming your ancestors. So we got to get serious. We got to stop playing, because time is running out. So it's about taking responsibility for ourselves. It's about understanding today that our children are being socialized in ways that are vastly different from their parents. Before the average child leaves high school, that is before the age of 18, the average child will spend time viewing or engaging in over 10,000 hours of video games, first 18 years of their life. They will spend over 20,000 hours sending emails and instant messages. You got children, 7, 8, 9 years old with cell phone. What the hell does a child that young need a cell phone? What kind of sense does that make? Ringtones. Over $1 billion a year is spent in ringtones. And most of that is spent by youth under the age of 18. Look at all of that money that's being spent making some institution and corporation wealthy. Children spend over 10,000 hours talking on the phone or watching video games on cell phones. That's a whole lot of time. A whole lot of time. Over 20,000 hours watching TV the first 18 years of their life. That's a lot of time that you're giving to someone who's proven that they don't have your best interest at heart. Spend over 15,000, they see over 15,000 acts of violence on television and film. Murders, assaults, rapes, beatings. Seeing it over and over and over and over and over again. And it becomes natural then for them to aggress against their friends, against their brothers, against you. They will watch, in the first 18 years of their life, over 500,000 commercials. Which means that they are programmed to be consumers. Conspicuous consumers. Unconsciously giving away their money and not using it to invest in themselves, their community. And within the first 18 years of their life, maybe, just maybe, they might spend at least 5,000 hours reading books. That is a shame. It's a shame that we have come to this in 2008. Because books are our most important resources. Everything that you need to know about anything is written down somewhere. But if you can't read, if you don't like to read, you'll never be able to access your keys to freedom. Back in the States, they have a saying that if you want to keep a secret from black folk, you do what? Put it in the book. Right? Because we don't read. Why? Because we've been programmed not to read. Why? Because during enslavement, it was illegal for African people to read. It was illegal for us to write, to tell where we came from, to say who we were, to say what happened to us, to say how we can thrive and survive, to say how we overcame. It was illegal to record that. So I'm not under any illusions as to why we act the way we act. But we are now supposedly free enough to make choices to do better. But we aren't doing as good as we could be and should be doing. And that ain't the white man's fault. Because at some point, you got to accept responsibility for your life. The white man is going to be the white man. He's going to be the same person he's been for the last 2,000 years. Now, at what point are you going to wake up and accept responsibility and change your way of doing things and stop blaming everybody else? Because you cannot oppress a culturally conscious mind. So it's about getting busy. It's about accepting responsibility for who you are. It's about understanding a very basic and fundamental reality that we have to begin to learn to think. Why? Because it's not illegal. Yet. It's coming. It's a matter of time before it will be illegal for us to meet in a place like this, to have this type of discussion, because we will be viewed as engaging in terrorist activities.
Across the board, isn't it? America, like.
Hey, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Terrorist act.
So we have to prepare ourselves. We have to do what we have always had the ability to do. Become a self-conscious people. A self-conscious people. You have to understand that we are constantly exposed to the media and realize that the media creates memories. We have to ask ourselves if this powerful forces in our lives affects us anywhere and everywhere we go. Who is the media? Who are these people? How did they amass this power? And if you can't think to begin to ask those critical questions, you'll never be able to do the things that you've always had the capacity to do. So there's a book that I encourage you all to purchase and read. A book entitled An Empire of Their Own: How the Jews Invented Hollywood, written by Neil Gabler. A Jew wrote a book talking about his people, his ancestors, and how they created one of the most powerful means of mental manipulation ever devised by human beings on this planet. So we got to read. We got to study. The tools of liberation are in libraries and bookstores, not at Blockbuster. So let's look at this, the people. Let's look at the names of the people. Adolf Zucker created Paramount Pictures. And most of these people happen to be Russian Jews who immigrated to the United States, the land of freedom and opportunity. They saw an opportunity, they invested their resources and their time, and they created an industry which has shaped the thinking of the world for over 100 years. Marcus Lowe of Lowe's Theaters. Lowe's Theaters is one of the largest theater chains in the United States. So once Thomas Edison invented motion pictures, and a few folk came together and saw the potential for these moving pictures to influence the masses, they then began to invest their money in production houses. They hired writers, they hired directors, they hired cameramen and lighting men, they hired actors, and they produced these films, and once the films are produced, we gotta have some place to show them. And so they talked to their partners and said, listen, we're going to ride this new wave. Moving pictures. And we need places to show them. So why don't you start developing these theaters where we can show our films? And you cultivate relationships and you build on them. Carl Lemmy of Universal Pictures. William Fox of Fox Pictures. Fox Television. Fox News. They pass these businesses on to their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. These are institutions which have helped them become financially independent. And they keep that money in the family. Louis B. Mayer, MGM Studios, along with Sam Gold. All right? They come together to create partnerships, to use the technology in order to make fortunes. Nothing magical about what they've done, please. Harry Cohen, Columbia Pictures. These are the people who set all of this stuff in motion. Jack and Larry Warner, the Warner Brothers. These are the folk who run your lives. Do you know anything about them? Do you know what motivated them to do what they did? Do you know how they spend their money? How they spend their fortunes? Oh, you're just too busy getting paid. You know, you're too busy playing, man. That ain't important. That's irrelevant. You better read it. You better study it. You better understand it. So, Hollywood. We have Hollywood in the States. You all have Pinewood here. Everybody is influenced by Hollywood, but does everybody know what Hollywood is? What is Hollywood? What is? Hollywood is the home of stars, celestial beings, larger than life people who we look up to, who we want to emulate. If we see stars wearing a certain dress, women want to buy that dress. If we see them driving a certain car, you want to go out and buy that car. If you see them smoking a certain brand of cigarette, you want to smoke that cigarette. You see them drinking a certain type of alcohol, you want that alcohol. They determine our reality. So let's understand that Hollywood was the wood that was used by witches, warlocks, and magicians. It was the wood that was used from the holly tree to make their magic wands so that they could cast a spell over their audience. Ain't nothing magical about this. This is simple. This is Sesame Street simple. But you just gotta do a little research, do a little reading. Then you can begin to understand the parameters of the matrix in which you live. They're not hiding anything. So, let's look at this. You all know what this is, right? You know what this is, right?
Yeah.
It's the Oscar. It's the highest award given by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science. Do you understand the concept for the Oscar? How it came about? Louis B. Mayer had developed his empire, and all of a sudden he decided, you know, we need to honor excellence in our field. So he hired this man by the name of Cedric Gibbons to create an award that would be the highest award given by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. And so Mr. Gibbons did his research, and he came up with this figure, which is a crusader. You see him carrying a sword, and he's standing on a reel of film. The reel of film has 5 stokes on it, and the 5 stokes represent the 5 branches of the Motion Picture Academy, which are actors, the writers, the directors, the producers, and the technicians. So understand the symbolism that went into crafting this prestigious award, the award which every actor wants. But know your history so that you can understand where this award originated from. Cedric Gibbons did his research, went all the way back to Africa, and saw that Fatah was the patron nectar of artists and craft persons in Kemet. He didn't change very much, but he did his research. Everything you need to know to do anything that you want to do is written somewhere in a book. But if you don't like to read, if you can't read, if you don't have any books, you'll never be able to compete in the world with folk who understand the very basic and fundamental reality. And so, the very first place where the award was given, the first Hollywood premiere, occurred in 1922 in a theater called the Egyptian Theater, Grauman's Egyptian Theater, built like an Egyptian temple, Kemetic temple. The ushers were dressed as kings and queens as they escorted the stars down the red carpet into the theater. And do you know the very first movie that was shown at the first Hollywood premiere? Take a guess. Not Cleopatra.
10 Commandments.
10 Commandments. The silent version of the 10 Commandments by Cecil B. DeMille was the very first movie that was shown at the very first Hollywood premiere. Now, why is it that these powerful people, these wealthy people, always turn to Africa?
Yeah.
African images, African deities, whenever they start a new venture, because they know better than we know the power of Africa, the power that is in us. That is real, that is true.
Yeah.
And then they teach us, oh, you don't want to be African.
Yeah.
Why are you into that black stuff? Huh? You don't want to be who you are. You don't want to be who God made you. That's obscene. So let me ask a question. What do these 3 people have in common? What does this black man, this white man, and this question mark have in common? Here's a question. Somebody give me some feedback.
Steady related.
It's a question. Somebody give me some feedback. Give me some feedback. What do they have in common?
Something southern.
Pardon me?
Something southern. Southern states.
No, not Southern States. No, that's not it.
Same smile.
No.
Who had plastic surgery?
No?
In the same society.
No?
Same nose.
No? This is Andy Young. He was the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations in the Jimmy Carter administration. This is Jimmy Carter, former president of the United States. And this is Michelle Jackson, pop star.
I know, lost.
Their influence on the American population.
No? All these three men, what these three men have in common is that they all offended Israel. They all offended Israel. Andy Young, former U.S. ambassador, in 1979, met with Yasser Arafat. And a photographer took a picture of Andy Young embracing Yasser Arafat at the end of their meeting. And Israelis were offended. How dare he embrace our arch enemy, and demanded that Jimmy Carter fire him. And he did. One image, one unacceptable image, caused this nation to rise up and move the most powerful black man in the United Nations from his position. Michael Jackson in 1996 wrote a song entitled They Don't Care About Us. And the lyrics in that song, some of the offensive lyrics in that song were Jew me and kite me. And Jews said, how dare you use those words in this song? They are offensive to us. And they demanded that Michael Jackson remove the lyrics from his song and that he take them out of his CD. And guess what? He did. Now, we are called every name except a child of God in the music that our children listen to. And I have not heard anybody or seen anybody rise up to effect meaningful change in all of these rappers who have made millions of dollars insulting us with this offensive language. Because we don't even know we're being offended. Jimmy Carter, 2 years ago, published a book entitled Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid. And in his book, he wrote about the fact that the Israeli government was intentionally undermining any efforts towards peace with Palestine. And he equated Zionism with apartheid. And the Jews were offended. Jewish members of several organizations that former President Jimmy Carter was affiliated with retired from those organizations. Monies that Jews were given to organizations that was associated with Jimmy Carter, they pulled that money out. They protested him at every book signing he went to because he dared to equate Israel with apartheid. Now, wait a minute, what is it about the Jews that you can't talk about them in a negative light? Because they invented Hollywood and they know the power of images. If you say one negative thing about Jews, then somebody else is going to say a negative thing. And somebody else and somebody else. And that negativity is going to begin to sink into the consciousness of people who hear it, who see it, and they will begin to see Israel in a different light. They are not going to let that happen because they control images. They are prominently placed in the media. Dr. Lynn Jeffries made this comment back in, 2001 at a speech in upstate New York, talking about the Jews control Hollywood, which they do. And he was forced out of his position as the chair of Black Studies at City College.
How?
And the Jews, because they exercise their power. They exercise their power. They don't just talk about it, they act on it. They are in positions of power. They threatened his life. For the 5 years after Dr. Jeffries made that statement, he received so many death threats that he had to wear a bulletproof vest as he moved through life. That someone attempted to kill his mother by loosening all of the lugs on her car so the wheels came off as she was driving down the highway. Just because he said that the Jews control Hollywood. All right?
Is that why Farrakhan kicked out Khalid Mohammed?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right? Khalid Muhammad, speaking at Kane College in New Jersey, made comments about Jews, made comments about popes, and Farrakhan kicked him out the Nation of Islam. Now, Khalid Muhammad had been making those comments for years. It was nothing new. Everything that he said under the authority of Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. So Khalid Muhammad was set up. And the United States Senate, United States Congress, for the first time in its history, censured Khalid Muhammad for his comments. For the first time in history. Now, folks have been calling us niggas, bitches, and hoes for far, far too long. And nobody has risen up to object that. So, reality is, the only folk who are going to act in your defense are you. And if you don't begin doing it, if we don't begin doing it, speaking as one voice, telling Jay-Z, you got to cut it out. Telling Snoop Doggy Dogg and Lil Kim, y'all got to cut it out. Because if you don't change, we are not going to buy your product. And all you got to do is make an example of one person and everybody else will get in line. But it means we've got to take a stand. As long as we don't take a stand, everybody will walk all over us. So the question that we have to ask ourselves as we wind down now, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, who has been responsible for the most deaths, injuries, and imprisonments of black males in the 20th century? Has it been the Ku Klux Klan, which in its 88 years has been responsible for lynching approximately 3,200 black folk, male and female, and children? 3,200 over a period of 88 years. Has it been the Ku Klux Klan, or has it been Snoop Doggy Dogg? Or has it been 50 Cent? These Negroes in 10 years have been responsible for the deaths of over 10,000 black men, have been responsible for the incarceration of over 100,000 black men and women who have emulated their foul behavior, who have been innocent victims of unconscious Negroes who were imitating their behavior and just happened to be hit by a stray bullet. And there are literally hundreds of thousands of people who weren't killed, but were shot and now paralyzed for the rest of their life. And their mama and their daddy got to wipe their behinds because they wanted to be a part of the thug life. Let's be honest with ourselves. We are our own worst enemy.
Yeah.
Stop blaming the white man. There's enough that he has done, but he can sit back. If he took a vacation for the rest of his life, from here to eternity, we would still act crazy and do the craziness to ourselves that we have been programmed to do. So it's about accepting responsibility for yourself. American Gangster, last year. American Gangster. I like Denzel. I like Russell Crowe, both great actors. I like Ridley Scott, great director. He's directed some of the best movies in the world. American Gangster, saw it and it made me uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable because what the movie did was to glorify the lifestyle of a Negro. All right? A Negro, Frank Lucas. Now, most folk saw the film, but they never did any research on Frank Lucas. I'm not surprised, brother. Frank Lucas, a Negro out of North Carolina, who according to his biography, only went to school 3 days in his life. And 2 of those days, the teacher wasn't in the classroom. And yet he makes his way into Harlem, becomes an associate of Bumpy Johnson, one of the biggest gangsters in Harlem, learns to trade from Bumpy, and when Bumpy dies, he takes over and becomes one of the largest drug kingpins in U.S. history. Comes up with this idea of instead of buying his heroin from the mafia, he's going to go directly to the source, to Cambodia. Made the trip out there, talked to the drug lords, and bought the drugs directly from them, and then had it shipped to the United States in the coffins of U.S. soldiers who died fighting the war in Vietnam. So military aircraft brought the drugs back into the country, which destroyed an entire community in Harlem. So what's the deal behind Frank Lucas? Because I was amazed when he talked about, I wanted to know what makes people do the things they do. Now you got to study people. Understand, how did they learn what they know? What motivates them to do the things they do? What events in their childhood? What events throughout their lives cause them to do the things they do? How do they think? And so I was amazed when Frank Lucas talked about this process of how he got this idea to go over to Cambodia, to go directly to the source to bring back pure heroin and sell it on the streets at half the price. Everybody else, this blue magic that got everybody hooked, was the source of so many ODs. Tens of thousands of people died because of Frank Lucas. Hundreds of thousands of families were destroyed because of this monster, this beast. He is not to be glorified. But he talked about the fact that because he had enough money, he could afford to do things that the average person couldn't do. And he would engage in this process where he would leave the United States and go to a Caribbean island. And he would stay in a hotel. And he said the first thing he did was to take the television out the room and put it outside so that he wouldn't be tempted to watch it. And then he said he would go into this meditative state and do this thing that he called backtracking, in which he would visualize, tap into his mental computer, and visualize everything that happened to him over the past year. All of the successful things that he did, all of the problems that he encountered, all of the sources of all the problems. And then he would look at how he dealt with those issues, successfully and unsuccessfully. He would analyze all of his moves, and then he would do what he referred to as forward tracking. Project himself into the future to see what things he was going to do, to see what potential problems he was going to encounter, so that he can map out in his mind how to negotiate these issues before they became issues. And then once he had his plan, then he put that plan in motion. He said it usually took him 30 days to do this. So he would get away from it all. He said he wouldn't eat during the day. Spend 12 hours just looking at himself, evaluating his life. And then he would always say he would order a meal and eat at midnight. Walk along the beach, get some fresh air, walk around. And then the next morning he would get back into it again. And once he had clarity, he then would return to Harlem and put his plans in action. All right? So, the other issue that we have to realize is not only was this man able to tap into what every single person in this room has the capacity to tap into, this unlimited power which you all have, and the power does not discriminate. It does not discriminate whether or not you have evil intentions in your heart or good intentions in your heart. It's just like electricity. Depends on what you're going to do with the power that determines the outcome. But the other part of the equation is Frank Lucas didn't do what he did by himself. Frank Lucas was an agent of naval intelligence who steered him toward the drug runners in Cambodia who were being financed by the CIA in order to use his money that he gave them to finance the war against Mao Zedong in China. All right? And then they allowed the drugs to come back into the United States of America on U.S. transports, which means that generals, lieutenants, sergeants, corporals, privates were all involved in this criminal activity. So it wasn't just, Frank Lucas wasn't just an American gangster. America is a gangster. America is the biggest thug. But when Jay-Z went to a special screening of this film, He said he was so taken by this story that he went back into the studio, and in 2 weeks he produced this CD. Again, which perpetuated this insanity. And there's not enough of our folks speaking out against this madness. So, the issue is, as we close down now, we wrap it up, how do we reverse this downward spiral and go from dogs to guys? And this is a picture I took as I was driving down my hometown, 47th Street in Chicago, on the south side, same street where a barbershop took place. And saw this brother walking down the street with his pants hanging down off his hips behind. So I said, my God, why would someone believe that this is all right? Obviously, this young man doesn't have a father in his household to tell him, boy, you pick your pants up. Doesn't have a mother who is conscious enough to do what this man needs in his life. So as a consequence, this started. You got folks doing the same thing here, don't you? All right. This madness began in the United States.
It's been here a long time.
And it's called sagging. All right, it's called sagging. And last year I was in Baltimore doing a presentation, talked about this phenomenon. And this young child, man, I love having young children around because they can just cut through the nonsense. This young boy came up to me and said, well, you know, sagging spelled backwards is niggas.
Wow.
So you just reinforcing these negative perceptions, this negative behavior, 24/7, 365. So part of the solution to these problems is to remember, to understand with crystal clarity that those who can make you believe in absurdities can make you commit atrocities. It's real simple. It's cause and effect. We have to remember a very simple reality that knowledge will forever govern ignorance. And the people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power that knowledge gives. So in the final analysis, brothers and sisters, your best friend is a book. We need to learn how to cultivate love affairs with books. And if you have more CDs in your house than you have books, there's going to be problems in your household.
Yeah.
If you spend more time watching DVDs in your house than you do opening a book, reading a book, and having your child watch you read a book and then discuss what you read, there's going to be problems in your school and in your community because you have not done what you as a parent are supposed to do when you bring a life into this world. Model correct behavior and protect that child from those who have proven themselves to hate you, to hate your child, to hate anyone that you would ever bring into the world. So let us be clear about this, that we can't point the finger of blame at anybody. It's not about blaming anybody. It's about waking up, getting out of the matrix, and accepting responsibility for your life. The media creates memories, but you control the media. Exercise your power. You can turn it on, you can turn it off. You don't have to watch it. You can buy the ticket or you can save your money. You don't have to buy all of those CDs. You don't have to buy those DVDs. It is your mind. It is your life. It is your responsibility to use both of these things with great care, with great love, and great respect. Because if you don't do it, it will not be done. And with that, I'm done. Thank you.